Hello everyone and welcome to the second edition of this video. Welcome to part 2 of Salesforce and evaluating the company and why it is my largest position. If you didn't watch the first video, I purchased $21,500 worth of Salesforce stock, which based off of my portfolio size, which sits a little over 30 grand, is the largest purchase I've ever made. It is by far and away my biggest investment, and I'm going to go over the individual reasons why I think this company is going to be a success. Now, if you didn't catch in the first video, basically we talked about the 360 and all that Salesforce has to offer and why each and every one of these businesses are fantastic for a value proposition for a customer that's wanting to pay an annual fee and pay for their services, and how they're constantly integrating new services, how they're acquiring new businesses. It seems like literally every single year. Now, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over two main segments. The first one being the market opportunity, looking how fast this company's growing and how big the TAM really is, because it's pretty astounding. And then furthermore, throughout the video, we're going to talk about each individual business, because not only is Salesforce as a whole growing, as you can probably see from these slides, but more importantly, each individual business is growing separately. It's more like, instead of Salesforce itself growing, what it's really like is 7, 8, 9 different cloud companies all under the same umbrella, growing at the same time, well into the double digits. So we're going to go over all that in this video. We're going to use M1 Finance today like we always use. We're going to use some of its platform, some of its software to look at some of these charts and get an idea where the stock price has been over the last year. If you haven't used M1 Finance before, my referral link is down below in the description. We've had 121 people sign up so far. Usually this referral link leads you up to even $10 to even upwards of $50 for getting signed up. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to part 2. Check out number 1 if you haven't already, and let's go ahead and get started with the stock price for CRM. Now, I bought 100 shares at $215, and I just bought them about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, the last couple days have been down, and of course, that's how it always works with my investment. It immediately goes down, but I think over the long term, this is going to be great. Because once again, if you look over the last 6 months, this company's down 35%. Year to date, it's down 25. A year, it's down. But if you get to the 2 and 5 year charts, it looks a lot better. That's why the further you go out with these growth companies, normally the better it gets, and Salesforce is no exception. Now, once again, 360 offers multiple different offerings, and this is just a glance at some of their biggest products. And I won't break all these down because that was all done in part 1. Now, I want to start off with the market opportunity, the TAM, or the total addressable market. These are some statistics that have been researched by outside sources. The source is IDC Worldwide Future of Work Spending Guide in 2021. The spend on digital transformation from 2019 to 2024 is growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 15% over the next 5 years. This is a $10 trillion. I'm going to repeat that, a $10 trillion opportunity. That's why it says here the new world is a massive opportunity for Salesforce. $1 trillion of spending on future of work technologies is going to happen by 2024. And then 57% of total technology spend will be on digital transformation in 2024, up from 42% in 2020, which is already a massive, massive number. Now let's talk about competitors. There's obviously competitors in the space. I'm sure you probably know either all or most of these 4 names right here: Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, and Adobe. Now, if you look at the market share for all these 4 down here are either staying flat or even declining, especially for the names like the old school companies like Oracle and SAP. Now, it is very dramatic seeing the market share difference from Salesforce versus the 4 competitors, and that's even beating out these 2 newer age, massive market cap companies, Microsoft and Adobe. You can see the dramatic increase for Salesforce. Not only is it growing individually, not only is the market, the total addressable market, growing to 10 trillion, but as it's growing, the market share is being taken by Salesforce from these other companies. So that is great. It is beating out these other tech giants, which is another reason why I'm so bullish on it. Now, if you look at this chart, this gives you an idea in terms of the numbers. Rather than just seeing the little graph, you can see the actual numbers behind this. You can see the year-over-year revenue for these different enterprise companies like Microsoft, like Oracle, like SAP. going from 5, 10, 20, and now they're reaching 30 billion plus. Now, a side note, I think it's really funny. The 2023 guidance has actually been risen. This was made a couple months ago by Salesforce. It says 31.8 billion right here. It's now guided over 32 billion for fiscal year 2023. I just thought that was funny that they even raised their revenue targets from the time that this was created, okay? Now, this is the year-over-year revenue. I showed this in the first video, but I'm just going to briefly go over all three of these little charts right here. The first one is the revenue. It says outstanding revenue performance, going from 4 billion all the way up to 26.35 billion in fiscal year 2022. Now, this represents a CAGR, a compounded annual growth rate of 26%, okay? Now, more importantly, as this SaaS business grows, software companies typically have trouble making profit. Now, I have to say that in the past, they're not that focused on being profitable. And even today, it's still not a main focus. While they are profitable, it's not the main focus. They're still in the growth stage of their business. I think that profitability stage will probably come sometime between now and say 2030. They'll start focusing a lot more on profits than they will on actual top line growth. To be fair, I could say that, you never know, because this leads me into the next part. While their profits are increasing, their operating margins are increasing, the main reason why this top line revenue continues to be so successful is because you see all these little logos right here. You see this little circle, you see this little circle, this one, this one, this one. These are just examples of the different acquisitions that they've made and how it's not only leading into top line performance like we see here, but bottom line, such as the operating margin from these big acquisitions such as Slack, such as Tableau, such as MuleSoft, and how it's improving the profitability of this company as well. Operating margins are expected to be near 20% plus this year, which is just absolutely incredible. The cash flow is looking great as well. Obviously, when you have revenue going up, when you have operating margins going up, cash flows continue to increase. In fiscal year 2014, less than $1 billion, and then this year in fiscal year 2022, they just finished out with over $5.5 billion. Once again, same with the revenue, about a 6x since 2014. Okay. Now moving further. Now that we're talking about the overall TAM, the total addressable market, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the individual SaaS businesses. Like I said, while it is great that Salesforce is growing, if you didn't know anything about the company and I just showed you these annual revenue charts, you would just think that it's just, oh, the sales business is just growing. That's awesome. But it's actually further than that. It's more so like 8 or 10 different cloud businesses all growing simultaneously under the same umbrella. In the same way that Microsoft, we looked earlier here, we looked at this chart showing how Microsoft is probably the best performer on this chart. Microsoft is not one business. It's a collection of businesses. They just recently acquired Activision Blizzard, and they've acquired so many other big names such as LinkedIn and other big names like that. But Salesforce is doing essentially the same thing. They're acquiring other businesses that fit under their umbrella of products, so that way they have a stronger product offering and they can add more to their 360 platform. And here's how all these are growing, okay? Now let's take a look at these. First off, their service sector is growing the fastest, okay? It is growing at 23% year over year in fiscal year 2022. The sales, their flagship product and where they originally got their start, which is kind of shocking to me that their service sector has actually outgrown their sales now, but still, it's kind of crazy. $5.9 billion for the sales, growing at 15% year over year. What about the platform? The platform sector did $3.9 billion and it's growing at about 19% year over year. What about the marketing and commerce? Marketing and commerce, which by the way, I'd like to add that I think especially for this marketing and commerce sector, I think out of all of these, I think what has the most opportunity, which is part of the reason why it's one of the fastest growers on this list, especially the commerce business, I'm really excited about. But marketing and commerce grew at 28% year over year, coming in at $3.8 billion. And then lastly, you have MuleSoft and Tableau, which does things like analytics and some other AI and marketing techniques. But basically, it grew at $3.7 billion, which was a 31% revenue growth number. You get the idea. MuleSoft and Tableau, 31%. Marketing and commerce, 28%. Platform, 19%. Sales, 15%. Service, 23%. Each individual segment of the company is growing. If you want to look at it from this chart, this gives you a better idea of how big each individual business is growing. If you look at it from this perspective, this is overlaying each individual business on top of each other, addressing its massive $248 billion calendar year 2025 total addressable market. If you take all these 4-year CAGRs and put a weighted average behind it, the 2021 to 2025 calendar year CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate, each one of these segments should be growing at about 13% year over year. So each individual business is growing and expanded massively. Now, if you want to look at it from this view involving ExactTarget, Demandware, MuleSoft, and Tableau. The reason why it has these separated, if we go back here, for example, the marketing and commerce, the platform, the sales. So a lot of these have been developed directly from Salesforce from their own developers. They didn't have to acquire these businesses. They just made them organically. But if you go to this is all from M&A, mergers and acquisitions activity, okay? And this just shows you how amazing some of their mergers and acquisitions have been over the last decade. Okay, so looking at each one of these individual businesses, the first one that we're going to look at, the oldest, which is going back to 2013, ExactTarget. ExactTarget, at acquiring the business, was doing $208 million of revenue, which, by the way, as you should mention, all these, since they are software as a service, they're all subscription-based revenue. So if you see, for example, in this one doing $2.3 billion in revenue, that is recurring. That's not a one-time sale. That is each and every month, each and every year, and likely to grow over the next several years. So they were doing $286 million in revenue, and now they're doing $2.3 billion in revenue, over an 8x in 8 years. Absolutely incredible. Demandware. In 2016, they acquired Demandware, and they were doing $227 million in revenue in 2016. Now they're doing $880 million in revenue, which is absolutely incredible just from 2016 to 2022. So if you look at MuleSoft, May of 2018, only a couple years old, they were doing $284 million in revenue. Now they're doing $1.5 billion. Once again, a 5x in revenue in just 3 short years. Now, this is the most recent of all of them, Tableau, which was a large acquisition. Other than Slack, was their largest acquisition ever. In August of 2019, it's only been around a couple of years, so they haven't had a lot of time to expand this. But $1.2 billion and some change in 2019 when they acquired it. Now it's doing $1.7 billion, which is absolutely incredible. Now, they did just acquire Slack. Now, Slack is more recent. By the time this investor presentation came out, which was about 6 months ago, the acquisition of Slack had not closed yet. Now that it is closed, you will see probably next year on the investor presentation, you will see Slack on this list. Now, Slack is one that they did pay quite a bit for, and I think that is part of the reason that you see this downturn in stock price over the last year or so. If you look year to date, it's down 25%. A lot of investors think that Salesforce did overpay for Slack. Now, whether or not they did, I don't want to sit here and argue, but the main reason that they bought it is not so much for the valuation. The reason that they bought it is that when you look at the 360 and all these stackable Salesforce products, they integrate with one another, and that's the reason that they bought Slack, so that way they can have a higher value proposition, not so much for the valuation. And of course, obviously long term, it will bring lots of revenue and hopefully lots of profit. So you'll see that one on this slide probably next year. Now, if you look at this slide right here, we showed some of the other ones overlaying it against competitors like Microsoft and SAP, Oracle, and all that good stuff. But if you look at Salesforce by itself and you look year over year numbers at how fast it is growing, and more importantly, how fast it's projected to grow into the future, right now, this calendar year, so fiscal year 2023, it's projected to have about $32 billion. Like I said, they updated that number slightly higher, $32 billion this coming year. And by 2026, they're supposed to have $50 billion plus in revenue. And so imagine what the bottom line will be. When we go back to, where's that? This slide. With the operating margins improving every year. So not only do they keep growing, but each dollar in revenue that they get is getting more profitable by the year. So if they get anywhere close to this by this revenue by 2026, imagine what the potential profits will be. Now, if you go to analyst projections, they follow up pretty much with what Salesforce has to say. If you see right here, it goes up to 2025, goes up to 44 billion. So if you assume a little bit of growth in 26, you can assume that they will reach this target. And analysts are agreeing that they will see this target revenue hit by 2026. Now, if you look over here in these three columns, 2023, 21% growth, 18% growth, 17% growth. But what about the profitability? 22% growth, 21% growth. With these scalable SaaS businesses, as they continue to grow, they reach larger scale, which means each individual dollar of revenue becomes more valuable than the last. And that talks about the unit economic margins that we talked about in the previous video. If you didn't see that, go check it out. And then lastly, I wanted to just put a quick side note talking about the international opportunity. This last little section right here, this green one, it shows the international versus Americas. In 2020, 67% coming from the Americas, 66 last year coming from the Americas, and then this year and the last year they did 64%. Notice that only about a third of the revenue is coming from international expansion, and that is where the large focus is going to be, especially in the coming years. They've really focused on the United States over the last 2 or so decades that they've been in existence, but now moving forward as they continue to gain market share, they're going to expand into the whole globe. So lots of fast-growing companies in China, in Europe, and all those other countries, they're going to finally start getting revenue and taking market share from, and I think they're going to capitalize fantastic on that. And also I wanted to add the multi-cloud, as we talked about, more of their customers, as you can see, it started out with 92% 2 years ago, and now it's up to 95. Originally, when people start with just one product, normally the sales or the service product, as they continue to grow, where's that slide at? Right, yeah, here. So as they continue to grow, normally people start out with one of these two, the sales or the service. But as they add on more cloud, like the platform, marketing, commerce, MuleSoft, Tableau, ExactTarget, all these different products, that's what causes more of these people to have multi-cloud, which once again brings the long-term lifetime value of a customer up. Other than that, guys, that talks about all the reasons why I think Salesforce is a fantastic company, why I think they're going to be amazing moving forward, and why they're my largest position in the biggest stock purchase I've ever made. 121 people that got signed up with M1 Finance so far. Get $10 right now to get signed up. Sometimes it goes as high as $50, so stay tuned for that. The link is down below. You'd help support me and my channel. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.